All right, hello class. Let's talk about our node 6.1, which is about load and store. Let's first think about the need to have so many variations. So let's think about this. We have CPU. CPU. In the CPU, we have registers. Let's assume like R1. And so that's 4 bytes. 0 is the most significant byte of our R1. 3 is the least significant byte of R1. And then we have the RAM. Right? RAM is just a sequence of bytes. The process of going from RAM to the CPU, we call this load, LDR. The process going from the register, put it into the RAM, we call this store, STR. Normally, if you say I load 4 bytes from RAM, put it into a register, or put the entire register into the RAM, there's no problem. But there are special cases like what if I have a char in the RAM? So I have this byte. I want to load this C into my register. The question is, where should I put this C? Because the register has 4 bytes. Which byte should I put this C? What should I do with the other 3 bytes in there? Right, so this is kind of what this node is primarily about. Let's talk about the variations. So first thing is load byte. There are 2 variations. First one is called load signed byte. The second one is called load byte. The meaning being this. So I have a byte in the RAM. I want to load it into a register. So I will put it in general into the least significant byte of a register. And then what should I do with byte 0, 1, 2? For load signed byte, what you'll be looking at is the leading bit of this byte. What is the leading bit? And then you will repeat. So this is the sign extension. You extend this sign for byte 0, 1, 2. But if you load unsigned byte, what you do is you just append 0 in there. Another variation is half. Right? So if you think about a B and C in here, so how should I put these 2 bytes, which is like a short, into my register? And what should I do with my other 2 bytes that I didn't use? Similarly, if you are looking at sign, you do sign extension. If it's unsigned, you do just 0 extension. Starting from half, you got to be careful. There's endiness that you have to be careful. So if you think about B and C, they are short. Then there is a byte that is the most significant byte. The most significant, assuming it's B. Okay, then this most significant byte will be coming over here. But this is kind of assuming that B is the most significant byte. Depending on endiness, we have to think about it, but this is the idea. So you load 2 bytes from the memory, put it into the last 2 bytes of a register, then you take care of the first 2 bytes, byte 0 and 1, by either doing the sign extension or 0 extension. There is a requirement, the address that you load from the memory. If you say load 2 bytes from it, then the address of this location in the memory must be a multiple of 2. We call this half-word aligned. There is also LDR. What LDR is just a normal load, 4 bytes from here, going to 4 bytes into the CPU. There's also something called load double word. You basically said, what if I have 8 bytes like all these 8 bytes. I want to load 8 bytes from the memory into the CPU. So 8 bytes can be long, or it can be a double. So because each register is only 4 bytes, you'll need 2 registers working together to hold those 8 bytes. One thing, just be careful when you do the char type in ARM, you should always assume that the char is unsigned. It's because when C language was designed, there was no default sign for char. So it's really up to the compiler. For ARM, by default, the C compiler thinks it's unsigned. For x86, which is Intel-based CPUs, like IE G6, a char is signed. So it really depends on the system, the architecture. But in CSC30, we always assume if you just declare a char variable in C, you need to translate it into assembly. This char is unsigned. Okay. And when you do the addressing, we normally do this kind of this is called pre-indexed addressing. You have a base register. This is the offset. So this is the base. This is the offset. And there is a range for the offset. It must be between positive and negative 255, which means if it's a small range. If it's a big range, you have to put that big range into a register. So you can say, well, move R4 with -8, or you can use LDR R4 equals to a large number. Then you just use R4 as the offset. Now let's do some exercise in here. So supposedly R4 has this value. Okay? We're going to do some load and store exercise. This is in the CPU. Okay? R4 has this value. And this is the RAM. At this location, which is pointed by R4, initially it may have nothing in there, but we're going to first run this instruction. Okay. So R5 equals to 2468 ACED. And if you do a store of R5 into this location, because of NNS, just be careful. The most R5 will have 2468 ACED by 0, 1, 2, and 3. The most significant byte 24, which is this word, will be put into the higher memory location, right? And then the least significant byte will be put into lower memory location. Just be careful because of little ending. Now let's try to play with this a little bit. The first thing is we'll go to location pointed by R4, which is this byte. We'll load a single byte, and we're loading a signed byte. So this single byte will be put into the least significant position of R5. Because of sign extension, E is 1110. Look at this bit. We're going to do sign extensions of ones. So we're going to fill in a bunch of ones in front of ED, the hex. This is what we will end up with. If you do let's look at this one then. If you load a byte, but the location is not necessarily R4, it's R4 plus 2. R4 is pointing to ED plus 2, which is give you 68. And for 6, its value is 0110. The sign bit is 0. Okay, so we're going to extend signs all the way here, which give you 00 in hex. Okay. So for signed byte, it is always looking at the sign bit and extend it. If you load a byte but it's unsigned. So if you say LDR R5 R4, basically you'll get this thing, ED. But because you are doing unsigned load, these things are always 0. Okay. If you load unsigned R4 to 3, R4 plus 3, which is 24, you don't care about the signed bit because it's unsigned, it's always 0 extension. In the end, let's compare signed with unsigned. So R4 plus 1 is a location which is AC. So you will load it in. And then this is signed extension. So you see ones repeating in the front because the leading bit of A is a 1. But if you load the same AC in here, but it's unsigned, you will only do 0 extensions. Okay. In PA2, what you will have is you have a struct, and one of the member variable in that struct is a char. So when you try to process that char, you should always use LDRB. Okay. Now let's think about half. Right? So it's very similar to what we did before. This is R5. So this is the RAM. Okay. This is byte 0, 1, 2, 3. And R4 points to over here. So the first thing I do is load signed half from R4. So I want to load 2 bytes. These are the 2 bytes. Remember, if we think about the address of a variable, for example, like a short, it is always that byte with the lowest memory address. So I need to load these 2 bytes into the last 2 bytes of R5. Now, keep in mind, this is little endian. Little endian means if you think about the value of these 2 bytes, the most significant byte is AC. The least significant is ED. Okay? And in registers, there are no endianness. The most significant byte will be written at a lower memory location. The least will be in the higher memory location because it's signed extension. First bit of A is 1, so this is what we have. Similarly, R4 plus 2, which start over here. So we have 2, 4, 6, 8. Signed extension, the leading bit of 2 is 0, so C zeros. Okay. And keep in mind, whatever you do with R4, if I want to load a half, the offset must be a multiple of 2. We can't say R4 1. That doesn't work. Okay. If I load a normal half without signed extension, so if I say load from location R4, I still load ACED in here, but I'll just do 0 fill in there. And here's 2468. We still do 0 fill here because it's always unsigned. If I do a load without load half, then you are loading from this entire thing. Remember, and little endian, so in R5 it's going to be reversed. This is kind of load data structure. So we talk about load half, load, and now for load double. This is a little bit complicated. For example, if in our data section, we create this quad with value of 8 bytes. Now in the memory, what does it look like? This is byte 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Because of little endian, remember data is in the stack, which is part of the memory. the most significant byte is written in here. Okay, so A, B, C, D, E, F. Endiness only happens to multiple byte data. There's no endiness inside a single byte. Okay. And then, for example, if I say load the address of A into R1 and I want to load a double. So basically R1 is pointing over here. And if you say you want to load a double, the target register must be an even number. And then the next register right after it will be constructed together. And those 8 bytes will be copied into a concatenation of 2 registers. So in here, if it's R2, then R2 and R3, they will work together. The most significant byte will be read into R3. The least significant 4 bytes will be read into R2. So if you think about this, R3 will have the most significant 4 bytes, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then R2 will have the least 4 significant bytes, 90, A, B, C, D, E, F. So this is how a double word is read into the registers. Okay. All right. Before we talk about store, just one more example about using like string to long. For example, you have to provide end pointer, and so you pass this end pointer, pass its address to string to long, and you want to check is end PTR pointing to \0 or not. How do I take care of this? Just be careful. End PTR itself is a stacked variable. So in other words, end PTR is over here. So this is end PTR. It has an address of FP minus whatever. And let's call this end PTR offset, whatever this value is. So if you want to know, well, what is the dereference of end PTR, you have to load twice. The first load in here basically is you put the value of end PTR into R3, and end PTR is pointing to a char. The next load, you have to load a byte. So you load from the location that end PTR is pointing to, and you're getting a char. And then you compare if this char is 0 or not, because spec that 0 is ASCII value is 0. Okay, so just be careful on this. Now let's look at store. Store is relatively easy. As you can see, there is no sign or unsigned. Why is that the case? So you may have CPU, and it has registers, it's 4 bytes, and then you have the RAM. If you want to store a byte, basically you are taking the least significant byte of the register, and you can put it anywhere in the memory. And there is no need for you to extend anything in the memory, because the side of memory is just indexed by byte. You can also say store half, which means you store the last 2 bytes of in a register into the memory. There's no need for you to do either 0 extension or sign extension. A normal store, 4 words, 4 bytes. That's the most straightforward one. You can also store a double word. In other words, 2 registers work together to store a double word, and then you can put all those 8 bytes together into the memory. And it's kind of the reverse of what we have in the load double word. Okay. And the addressing mode that we're going to use is exactly the same like before. It's the pre-index addressing. Let's look at the example in here. So assuming R4 has is pointing to this location, right? And then we say R5 has the value of 2468 ACED. What's going to happen to this location if we use a binary store? For example, if I say store byte of R5, I'm just grabbing this last byte and put it into this location pointing by R4. So what we have in here is the location. This is in the RAM. Okay, this is not the value of R4. It is the location in the RAM pointed by R4. So what's going to happen? Those 4 bytes is there's an ED in there. That's it. 1 byte is put in there. Let's say store half, which means the last 2 bytes are put into the memory. Okay. Let's assume that these memory locations start from scratch, like all zeroed out again. So what's going to happen? The first thing you'll see is the location I'm trying to write these 2 words are in here, starting from here. There's R4 plus 2. These 2 bytes, so these are not affected. But starting from here, ACED, the most significant byte is AC, the least significant byte is ED. And because the memory is little endian, AC will be here, ED will be there. Okay. Another example, let's see, store a byte from R5 into location R4 plus 1, which is over here. So we have ED here, and everything else are zeros. And when you do byte operations, there's no alignment restriction. If you say store into R4 plus 3, this ED will be put in there. Okay. So let me write down R5 has a value of 2468 ACED. Next in store, the entire value of R5 into the memory location pointed by R5. Let's think about this. So the most significant byte is in here in the register, but in the memory, because of little endian, it's going to be reversed. The least significant byte is at the lower memory location. Store half of R at the location R4, but R5's value is this. So we're trying to do this, which gives you, again, due to endianness. Okay. Now, if you look at double words, so how does this work? For example, if I have first create something in the data section, we did this before. 7890 ABCDEF. Right, and in the BSS section, we carved out a bunch of zeros in here. This is for B. And in the text section, first, I will let R1 point to A. I can do a load double word. We just did this before. So we'll put it into R3 and R1. The even number registers, basically R3, R2, this will be they'll be constructing a double word. R3 contains the most significant bytes, and then R2 contains the least significant bytes. Okay. And then I can let R1 point to B. R1 will be pointing over here. And I do a store double word, R2 and R3. So R3, R2, they will be constructing a double word, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0, A, B, C, D, E, F. And then I write it into B. Again, be careful, it's little-ended. So the most significant byte is at higher location. Here is 9, 0, A, B, C, D, E, F. So it should be an exact copy of A. Okay. So this is the double word. Now, one example is Arano. Okay, Arano is a global variable. Basically, it stands for error number, and what it does is it is just if you call a function, like a lot of functions, will set this global variable to be a number, and you can use p-error to really print out what this error message means. And the way it works is initially error if there's no error should be set to be 0. What you can do here is you can just load error into R3, and keep in mind this error it is a global variable, so it's nothing but a label. So R3 in fact now points to error. Okay? You move 0 into R2, and then you store 0 into error. So in essence, you are setting error to be 0. Then you make function calls that might set error to be an error. And then once the function call is over, you want to check is error 0 or not. What you can do is you can do something similar. You let R3 point to it, and keep in mind R3 now is a pointer. You got to load again to get the value of error. Then you can compare error with 0. If you forget to have a load, you won't see a compile error. You will see a runtime error, and it's very tricky to find. Okay. The last thing I want to talk about in here, before we look at this exercise, is in PA2. There's this. Let's see. There's this. Let's go to PA2 welcome. Okay. So we have this struct. I want to use this time to talk about it a little bit. Okay. So in here, there is a struct that you have to manipulate very extensively. So there is that struct. Okay. So this struct is called time info. And this is the structure in here. So I just want to give you a layout of what this structure is like in the memory. So if you think about time info, if you think about the memory locations that we have, okay. So draw a little bit more. Okay. So we have LR, 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 LR here. FP here. So FP is pointing to the base. And if you create a struct time info, we call this X. And this X, in fact, has 3 integers followed by a char. So how does this work? For structs, so as int, I don't remember the name, time second, time minute, time hour, AM, PM. So as int, time second, int, time minute, int, time hour, and And then there's a char. We're just being very specific. Unsigned char AM_PM. So I'll just call this TS. This is called TM. This is TH. So I can write it in the cells in there. So how big is this struct? This is 4 byte, 4 byte, 4 byte, and this is 1 byte. It looks like we need 13 bytes. There's one requirement on the size of a struct. A struct, the size of the entire struct, must be a multiple of the largest data type in the struct. The largest data type in the struct is int, which is 4 bytes long. So that means the size of this struct must be a multiple of 4. So we're going to round it up, which means the size is 16. So TS will be here. You will start to lay out struct elements from the beginning. Okay? And then you have TM. You have TH. And now you have AM, PM. AM, PM is 1 byte, it's over here. So how do I access these things? And these are called paddings. So they're padded off. So it's -4, -8, -12, -16, -20. So if you want to access x.ts, its address is fp -20. TM is fp -16. TH is fp -12. AM, PM is offset is fp -8. You may say, why do we need these paddings? It's because what if you create a struct array? Then things has to be continuous. And by doing these paddings and also have a size requirement, we can guarantee that the array idea will work out. So this is kind of what I want to put in here before I stop the recording. If you know these, you should be good to go for PA2.